Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. This is your host, Erin Bradley. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 300 of the Pursuing Freedom podcast. I cannot believe that this is the 300th episode. And so I created a very special episode, and then I had to add this additional introduction because I had a little bit of a mathematical blooper as I was sharing the story around how 2025 in numerology is a number 9 year and it represents the ending of a 9 year cycle. And it's also the year of the snake, representing shedding and honestly the death of the old identity as we make way for who we are stepping into in 2026, which is a number 1 year. And also the year of the horse, which is momentum and power and possibility. And I will go on to share a story you're about to hear where I talk about the 9 year cycle, except I make one minor mistake. I start the story in 2015, which would be 11 years ago, not 9 years ago. And I think the reason I made this mistake is because at our recent women's retreat, we were talking about a book called Epic, the Women's Power Playbook. And it's a great book. It's also great for men to look at, to take a look at, because the concept is that while we can overestimate what we might be able to accomplish in 1 year, we can sorely underestimate what's possible in a decade. And I had been sharing the story of the decade starting in 2015. And then, yeah, made this mistake around this 9 year cycle. But regardless, the message is still important. And I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation that you're about to listen to. And I hope that it gets your wheels turning around the infinite possibilities that are on the horizon for you as you think back to how much has changed in your own life, whether it be the last 9 years, the last decade, or the last 11 years. Because as I did the reflection, I was living in a different place. This podcast hadn't even existed. I hadn't published a book yet. I hadn't even started my own branch of the company. My friendships were different. Some of my current friends I had never even met yet. Certainly some of my clients, my referral partners, what I was interested in, what I was stressed out about, the ages of my children. My career, so much has changed in that 9, 10, 11 years that it gets me personally filled with this eager anticipation around what's on the horizon. And it's so fun to think about it that way, because oftentimes when we're embarking upon some unfamiliar territory, which is where we feel called to next, it can feel really uncomfortable and scary and sometimes unrealistic or irresponsible. But when we look back, we have all the evidence we need to see how many times we've been faced with uncertainty and we've taken chances and it turned out okay, or we found ourselves in a state of darkness and it didn't remain permanent. We came back into the light. We've persevered, we've had resilience, and we've grown throughout the process, even through our failures. And so it's very empowering to do this process. And the other thing I want to do today is share an invitation with you, because it can feel really lonely when you are navigating those times of adversity or those times of darkness. And inside of the Pursuing Freedom community, you get just that. You get community where you realize you're not alone, and where you spend time with others whose energy and confidence is expanding and it's contagious. And all of a sudden you feel ready to step up into your next level self. And there's so many ways inside of my community that I can support you where you are. And that's what's so fun about it, is not just the Erin Bradley show. I have an entire community of coaches that bring every type of strategy and personality and modality to ensure that you get the resources you need exactly where you are on your journey. And it can be for as little as $49 a month to just a fraction of one closing commission for an entire year-long membership to our collective community that meets twice a week. And the people inside that community are genuine and loving and growth-minded and unwilling to settle anymore. And in this space, we see the flames become ignited. And together, it's like we create this wildfire of opportunity and enthusiasm that is just honestly so much fun. So if you feel called to move from a listener of the podcast or a follower on Instagram to a friendship, to a part of this community, I definitely want to encourage you to do so, because if there was ever a year to bet on you, it is 2026. It is the number 1 year. It is the beginning of the next version of you. And it is an opportunity for you to bet on who you're becoming, so that 9, 10, 11 years from now, you get to look back and remember that this year was your turning point. It was your point of no return. And from that point forward, you said, I'm done playing small. I'm done settling. I'm ready to level up and I'm ready to live out my fullest potential. And that's what I feel so blessed to be doing here today in this podcast. It's been such a blessing in my life. It's been so much fun, so many incredible relationships and interviews. If you're new to this podcast, highly recommend you binge some of the old episodes because the guests that I've had the honor of getting to know through the show are just so inspiring. They've taught me so much. And there's this feeling I have of living out my own divine assignment. And it wasn't easy to step into this version of me because I had a stable and successful business. And so to have the audacity to walk away from something that, for all intents and purpose, was doing well and it was successful and I was thriving financially and I still felt called to my next level self. And had I not taken that leap, I wouldn't be able to encourage others to do the same. So on the other side of every single risk we take is not only our own personal expansion, but the opportunity to grow the light within us and to share that light with more people so we can empower more people to step up into their true potential. And that's really what this is all about, is an invitation to say yes to your future self, even when it feels scary, even when it feels ridiculous, and to know that you are not alone at all on this journey. So if you want to get in the room, please reach out to me and check it out over at pursuingfreedom.com/collective. You can also check out the academy at pursuingfreedom.com/academy, or just reach out to me and connect through my email or my email newsletter or through Instagram. I'm here and I'm so ready to link arms with you and to get on the horse in 2026. Giddy up and let's freaking go. All right, enjoy this episode. Don't laugh at me too hard for my mathematical mistake. And I thank you so much for being here. I love you so much. And I'm so excited for this year. Enjoy. Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. This is your host, Erin Bradley, and I am so excited. I can't even believe it. This is the 300th episode of the Pursuing Freedom podcast. How on earth is that even possible? And it's so perfect because it's being released at the beginning of a brand new year. And there is so much magic in the air with this year, 2026. If you've been a part of my community or you've been following along for a while, you may have heard me talk about this, or maybe you've seen it on your Instagram feed. I know that the algorithm knows me well because I've been getting all kinds of incredible messages from the universe through Instagram about 2026 and all of the power and possibility that exists in this new year. And everyone I talk to is feeling it too. Like the last couple years have been crunchy and weird and hard. And there's been a lot of stuff that we want to leave behind. And that's what's so interesting about this year. So I'm going to share this with you in case you haven't heard this or seen it somewhere out there. But 2026 is considered a number 1 year, and 2025 was considered a number 9 year in numerology because 2025 is 2 + 2 + 5 = 9, right? And 9 represents endings. 2026 is 2 + 2 + 6 = 10, and 1 + 0 = 1. And the number 1 represents new beginnings. And in the Chinese calendar, I believe, I'm not very well versed on all this stuff, okay? But this is just stuff that I'm regurgitating from what I've been seeing all over the place. That 2025 was the year of the snake, and it represents a shedding, a death of the old. And 2026 is the year of the horse, which represents momentum, power, possibility, velocity. And with everyone I've talked to, they are all feeling that. Like, yeah, I'm so ready to leave behind 2025. But what's also interesting is that number 9 year represents the end of a 9-year cycle. And so as we step into 2026, it's like we get to be the architect of our future. We get to draw a brand new blueprint, like clear the slate and decide where do we go from here, knowing what we know now. And so I wanted to use this opportunity to invite you to reflect on the last 9 years. And so I'm going to share some stories with you guys because as I did my own personal reflection of this 9-year cycle, I was really, really blown away by the amount of things that transpired, the amount of fear that I experienced, the decisions I made while terrified that turned out to be great decisions, the times that I felt guilt or shame or regret. I mean, just a lot that I endured really in the last 9 years. And my suspicion is that if you do your own reflection, you've got some stories too. And so I want to start back in 2015, 9 years ago, because what's interesting about it is that going into 2014, as many of you know, if you've been following the podcast for a while, I had been riding the roller coaster of broke to burnout since I had gotten into the mortgage business back in 2006. So it's interesting too to think about that. Like there was a 9 year cycle. I went into the mortgage business in '06. I went 100% commission in '07. I fell on my face in '08. I crawled around on the ground for a few years, like feeling like an alien in this business, like I wasn't cut out for it until 2011, where I finally had this aha moment thanks to the Go Giver book. I developed a strategy that later became something that allowed me to double my business again and again. I started teaching that business to real estate agents and found that it was helping them too. A strategy that would allow you to be yourself, increase your referrals, and have more fun growing your business without feeling salesy. And then I experienced burnout and I almost quit the business in 2013. And luckily, I got some advice to get some help and don't quit, but like learn how to enlist support in your business so that you don't have to keep burning out at the peak of your capacity. And so I made a plan going into 2014 that I would hire somebody. And I ended up hiring one of my closest friends in the summer of 2014. And long story short is that between the time that I started onboarding her and training her, the business slowed down. And it was like the biggest fear came true, right? Within 3 months, the pipeline had almost dried up in August of 2014. But I knew that we had to do that to get her prepared. And so I looked at her and I said, okay, it's go time in September of 14. We had 2 closings that month, and I put my foot on the gas, if you will, but I had her support behind me. And by December of 2014, we had 12 closings in 1 month. Now, that was unheard of because it debunked the myth that the winter is always slow. The truth is that from consistent activity to results is about 90 days, regardless of the season of the year. It's when you put your attention on the growth of your business that you start to see results within 90 days. So where your attention goes, your energy flows. And so that was interesting. And as we came into 2015, we had 8 closings in January of 2015. So that was 9 years ago. Now, at that point in my career, I had never had a closing in January. I always thought I was going out of business in January. We've been joking about this inside my community. Like it's you know, you're starting all over like Groundhog Day. It's like, am I ever going to have another closing? And it's like, yes, you will, you know. So it was interesting to have 8 in January. And so there was this huge awakening for me that I had been the bottleneck in my business for far too long. And so there was this light at the end of the tunnel, but there was also this momentum. Interestingly enough, right? This is 9 years ago, so it's the beginning of a 9 year cycle, and it's like we're coming into that. And by March of 2015, we had 17 closings in 1 month, and it nearly broke us. And that's too much for 2 people. But the bottom line is, we made a decision at that point that we would start enlisting more help, and we would start really fine tuning and building out a stronger foundation that would allow us to serve more families with ease. And this is the key piece, right? Is that the whole impetus of pursuing freedom is that I didn't feel free when I was struggling financially, and I didn't feel free when I was working 24/7, exhausted, drowning, and surviving my own success. And this is kind of the epidemic of the real estate space, because unless you're willing to imagine a different future for yourself, where you have systems and support, you cannot get off this seesaw of highs and lows. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I joke that I started dragging bodies onto a speeding train as I hired more loved ones, and some of whom are still in the business today and thriving. And during that time, it was like, because we loved each other, we were just all hands on deck. We were winging it. You know, we had no clue how to build the systems or what to do. So by August of 2015, I decided it was time to hire a coach. So I contacted a coach that specialized in helping mortgage professionals scale businesses for freedom. And when I had my first introductory call with him and he asked me what I want, even though I was surrounded by support, willing support that were happy to help, I had no idea how to let go. This is a really common issue that I see with people that I work with, is that we say, you know, we're self-proclaimed control freaks. And I always joke with those that I work with, because everyone I work with is loving. They're wonderful people who became successful. And we hear the word success and we equate that to money, right? Like they've achieved high levels of volume. They've also achieved burnout. And in this high volume, they got there because they care so much about their clients. It's not because we're all naturally gifted at every aspect of what it takes to run a successful business, right? Like, think about all the hats we have to wear. We have to be relationship builders, marketers, we have to be attention to detail to make sure we have a successful transaction. We have to be good at follow-up. We have to be good at systems, accounting, technology, whatever, organization. And not all of us are good at all those things. But because we care enough about the client experience, we muster up the energy to make sure everything's done right. And so we become masters in the craft. We become great operators or technicians in our business. And we also become exhausted. And because we care, we do this thing inside of my community that's integrity check. Like, we're more integrity to the service of others than we are in integrity to ourselves most of the time. And because we've all mastered the art of making sure not to let anybody else down, even to the point of depleting ourselves, we experience this running on fumes as sort of the badge of honor of being quote unquote successful. And we don't want to complain because we feel lucky. So here I was surrounded by help, but not knowing how to let go, not feeling like I had enough time to train people properly. So I was kind of busy as the team leader, running around like a chicken with my head cut off, surrounded by people that were happy to help, but they didn't want to bother me because I seemed so busy. And this is another common epidemic with top producers or team leaders, is that they feel too busy to slow down to hire and train. So they say to me, it's fine, it's fine. I'll just do it myself, because the thought of slowing down is terrifying. So this comes back to when I had hired my team member in 2014. We did have to slow down. It took us about 90 days and things did slow down. But much like a slingshot, you've got to pull it back in order to launch. And so here I am, living proof on the other side of a very terrifying decision, which was not only to hire somebody, but to hire somebody that I really care about and to feel responsible for that person. And then to watch the business slow down and to feel the fear, right? And so on the other side of it, though, I saw what the slingshot could do. And so here I was in August of 2015. I meet this coach and he looks at me and asks me what my goals are. And I can't imagine adding anything else to my plate. And so we're going to go somewhere with this. Before you think about what you're adding in 2026 and beyond, I'm sure you've already written goals at this point. Hopefully, you've written some kind of vision or goals or business plan for 2026. But before you think about how many more transactions or dollars you're going to add, you have to think about what you're going to subtract. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he said, Erin, you have to do less. In fact, you have to do so much less in order to do more. And I was terrified. And then he told me what the investment was going to be to hire a coach and to be part of a community. And it was to the tune of about $25,000 a year. And I said to him, can I think about it? And he looked at me and he said, no. The thing is, we don't allow people into our community that are hesitators. We only take action takers. And it was really wild because I sat there and I thought about it and I was like, I don't know if I can afford this, but I can't afford not to. Because here I am, I'm doing all the things, I'm reading all the books, but at the end of the day, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And even though I've done the things they say to do in the books, I've hired the people and all the things, I was still missing the guidance of someone who had been where I was trying to go. And so I dove in headfirst. And for the next 3 years, between the investment in the coaching and the conferences and the travel and the hotels and all the things, I easily spent over $100,000. And I don't regret a single moment of it. I don't regret it one bit, because I wouldn't be here able to speak to the experience or to be a resource to others who are stuck where I was stuck for nearly 8 years if I hadn't taken that leap of faith, if I hadn't bet on me. And it is scary. So coming back to 2015, I invest in myself, and a few months later, or within a few weeks probably, he asked me what was one of my goals. And I said something about there being a 10-year goal, a 10-year plan of us getting a condo in the ski town in the mountains. At the time, I was running my business in Denver. And he looks at me and he says, why not now? And I hadn't really thought about that. I was like, I guess, I don't know. I didn't think that I could, but we already had a couple of rental properties. So we thought we could actually sell one of these rental properties and achieve this life dream now. Our oldest was in kindergarten. So if we're going to get a little ski condo, why not get it while the kids are young? We can experience it, right? And so once again, because of my coach seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself, my belief expanded. And next thing you know, we're closing on a condo in the mountains in November of 2015. This was one of many life-changing decisions that happened at the beginning of this 9-year cycle. So we get the condo, and with the help of the coaching, I start really fine-tuning the systems and we start building something beautiful. A lot of people have fear about hiring help. And when we talk about it, my mission is to reframe the narrative because there's fear there, right? There's fear of the unknown, fear of what someone may do wrong, fear of how it can hurt your business. I'm here to tell you that on the other side of having a team and then having a coach help me figure out how to make it all run well, we had a blast. And not only did we double, triple, quadruple the business over the next couple years, we did it while I actually had more ease. I had more peace. I had more joy. I was more present with all my loved ones. And little by little, I learned to overcome my fears with the help of my coach. Because again, the mentors can see in you what you can't see because they've already been where you are and where you're trying to go. And so it's really powerful. So it was actually a blast. We had so much fun loving on our clients. We amplified our visibility, we amplified our reach, our impact, and it was all from the heart. It was interesting because oftentimes we think we need to hire to the skills. But like I said earlier, if you and me could figure out how to put together a perfect transaction because we care about the client experience and we don't want to let people down, chances are someone else can learn it too, because I know I'm not special. I am not a rocket scientist, and chances are neither are you, right? So if we could figure this out, somebody else can too. So when you think about this idea of what it looks like to grow beyond the burnout, grow beyond the personal capacity with ease, with joy, with peace, usually what it looks like is hiring to the values. You can't train conscientiousness, you cannot train work ethic, and you cannot train going above and beyond. But I'm here to tell you there are many people out there that absolutely would love to be a part of your vision, your mission, and your values. And they can learn what you've been able to learn. And in doing so, they can free you up to get the ROI first and foremost of relief. And relief looks like energy, and energy is your currency, it's your magnetism. And when you get that energy back, your creativity comes with it, and you start to be more present with your clients, you're more impactful, which creates a different imprint on their hearts and minds. It gets them talking about you because your brand is how you make them feel. And when you're depleted, living in the illusion that you're doing your very best, giving from an empty well, you are compromising the ability to really reach your clients' hearts and minds in the way that you want to. And I know that you want to because it's how you became so successful to begin with. Now, if you're just starting off on your journey and you're thinking this all sounds like a great problem to have, I'm here to tell you it's inevitable. Because if you allow your energy and the way you make people feel, the way you are with your loved ones, your friends and family, when you're not thinking about work, if you allow that to be your brand with no filter, no comparing to others what you think you should be doing or what you're supposed to be doing, but who you really are, who you care about, and how you can serve them, even when they don't need your services, you will be unstoppable. Your success is inevitable. So I would encourage those in the beginning part of their journey to plan for success, expect it, and expect that you are going to have the resources in place to avoid the burnout altogether because it's simply not necessary. Now, coming into 2016, I had been teaching the workshop around be yourself, increase your referrals, and have more fun in growing your business. And I had this pipe dream of publishing a book. So I did. Somehow I signed up for a program. Once again, I hired a coach. I invested in a program that would teach me how to go from blank page to bestseller in 90 days. It took me 6 months, but I did publish the book Pursuing Freedom. And it's all about this idea that where is the freedom? It's not in the burnout. It's not in the broke, right? It's got to be somewhere in between, and it's in the systems and scale. And I continued on with the coaching. And coming along the spring of 2016, I said something to my coach about how I wish we could live there someday full time. And he said, why not now? So I went out to dinner with my husband in Denver and we talked about it. And I had all these reasons. And if you've ever been to any of my workshops, you know this. I was like, well, we can't because. And anything that follows because is fear. So I was just defending my fear. We can't because of my business, fear of my business being compromised by moving to an hour and a half away and living in a ski town, right? fear of losing our relationships. We had very close friendships, family, etc., in Denver. So I could go down the line of all the different fears. We can't because of this, we can't because of that. All it was defending my fear. And so we decided to say, well, what if? So we went through each fear and we said, what's the worst case scenario? We can always move back. So we went up for the summer of 2016 while I was writing the book. And as it turns out, we loved it here. And we ended up opening an office and it ended up doubling our business. So it didn't end up compromising. Once again, fear was inaccurate. Fear is believing in an imaginary future outcome that's negative. Faith, saying, what if it works, is the same exact thing. It's saying, but what if it works? And that's believing in an imaginary future outcome that's positive. Either way, neither outcome has happened. So the worst case scenario is you give it a shot and then you just reverse it if it doesn't work out. Okay. The other thing is I opened my own branch of the company. I left a comfortable position in a branch and I took that risk and I had the audacity to go out on my own, which once again was terrifying. But with the support of the coaches and the community around me, I was able to borrow their confidence. I was able to see what they were doing and learn from them. And I was also able to borrow the confidence they saw in me when they said, you can do this too. Okay. This is the power of coaches and community. So we do that and we go into 2017. And for all intents and purpose, everything's running smoothly now. Okay. We're all systems go. We have multiple offices. I've got an incredible team. We've dialed our systems. And then boom, in the summer of 2017, my parents come to visit us in the mountains in Colorado from Philadelphia. And my dad passes of a heart attack after a beautiful weekend. So inevitably, it rocked my world. And we talk a lot about this in my community too. What does it look like as an entrepreneur to show up in your business when you're in grief, when you're depressed, when you have anxiety, when you are scared? And, a couple weeks go by of me being in the depths of my grief, and I've got a team and I've got responsibilities and financial responsibilities. And so I had to really evaluate, what can I do? And this is important because we live in a world where there's so much noise, there's so much that we should be doing. And when we don't have the energy to do it, we then beat ourselves up, which further depletes the energy. And like I said earlier, our energy is our currency. So when you're already low and now you're criticizing yourself for not executing at the highest level because you don't have the peak energy, all we're doing is derailing our progress even further. And so I thought to myself, what can I do? And ironically, that's when I ripped the Band-Aid off and started trying to do video, just 5-minute educational videos. I thought to myself, I can't make phone calls. I don't have the energy to take on phone calls or conversations. I could barely make it to noon before I was depleted. And I thought, what can I do? I can do video. And even though it felt super awkward, like really awkward, I thought, I've got to do something. Well, those videos turned out to create a ripple effect and turned into a huge velocity of unexpected growth in our business. I started getting messages from people saying, like, thank you so much for that video. I really needed that, or I didn't know that, and thanks so much. Or, hey, I've seen your videos. It looks like you're doing great. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing great. I'm at the worst time in my life, really. And so it was interesting because the perception of the public when you show up online and you're doing it through the lens of, this is really embarrassing, this is awkward, and people are going to make fun of me. Oftentimes what your people are doing is they're cheering for you. They're proud of you. They love your videos. They love your energy. They love you, right? So that was a big learning curve because I had to act in spite of fear once again. And there's a theme here, right? So we go into 2018 and I have this idea of hiring a full-time executive assistant. And at this time we had started calling ourselves the mortgage unicorns because we always felt like we could figure out how to make miracles happen. And I hired another unicorn. And if she's listening, you know how much I love and appreciate you. And I said to her, hey, I have this idea of starting a podcast, Pursuing Freedom. Can you figure that out? And she had no experience whatsoever with podcasting or SEO or anything else. But you know what? She did it. And we launched a podcast in 2018. And during that time, the interest rates spiked in the mortgage industry. And so the refi business died temporarily. 2018, we had a significant decline. And as we were coming into 2019, I felt a ton of guilt. Our P&L was way in the red, like tens of thousands of dollars. And the company that our branch was under was really wanting to force my hand on layoffs. And as I mentioned earlier, I had hired so many of my loved ones. And also, if they weren't my loved ones before, they became my loved ones. So I wasn't willing to let that be an option. And I felt guilty because I felt like when I was starting the podcast, I was distracted. I took my foot off the gas or my eye off the ball. And so I looked at my business and I thought, it's all right. I know what to do because I have the strategy that I outline in my book. So I'm just going to apply the same strategy. But this time, it's not going to look like I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to hustle, I'm going to trade all my hours to get the results, I'm going to burn myself out. Instead, I decided that I'm going to streamline this. And luckily, I had the systems and support in place. And so we really evaluated which strategies were effective for our team, our brand, the way we make people feel. And we came up with a plan that involved certain activities that I was committed to on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, et cetera. And with the help of the team around me, we were able to execute with 100% consistency. And we ended up going from 3 closings a month in January to 15 closings a month by June. And from 2018 to 2019, we more than doubled the business once again. But here's the key factor. I skied almost 75 days that winter. I took 5 total weeks vacation in 2019 without working, not all in one trip, but in multiple trips. And on top of that, we spent about 6 weeks camping on the lake where we would just reverse commute to our life. So we'd live out on the lake in our camper and we'd come into town to, take the kids to sports and for me to go to the office and work. And then we'd go back out and have campfires and be out on the lake all evening and all morning. And so it was one of the most fun years of my life while doubling the business. And this is all to say that I was starting to experience an awakening here that you can have the best of both worlds. You have absolutely every power within you to make decisions going into this year that this is not only going to be your best year of your life financially, but it's going to be the best year of your life with joy and fun and present moments and adventures and trips. And when you say in your head says, I can't, just know that whatever follows is you defending your fear. Okay. So we all have fear. It's not special. It doesn't make you unique, right? And we can't outgrow it, unfortunately, because we're always on the leading edge of where we want to go from here. And if it's unfamiliar territory, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And this is why I always encourage everyone to find a mentor, find a coach, find somebody who's ahead of you in the game. Because when you get in the room with the right people, the right communities, you will be surprised how quickly those fears start to dissolve and get replaced by new beliefs, even before you have the evidence, because you can see the evidence in their lives. And nothing about anyone who's achieved anything extraordinary or who makes bold decisions in their life to take time off, to be with their families, to take time to grieve, for crying out loud. Nothing about them is special. It's just a decision to do it. And we don't know how much fear they have before that decision is made. We just know they made that decision because we're a witness to their evidence. And we get to see that evidence and get curious. We go into 2020, we all know what's happened. And we decided before putting our kids back in school in September that we'd rather not. We decided to do an online school that year. So with that, we were also trying to figure out how are we going to see our family back in Philadelphia? My mom, his dad, his mom's down in Florida. And so we decided we would drive. So the next thing you know, we buy a little RV for some friends, a very small one, a 23-footer with no slides. If you know anything about RVs, you know that is not something you're supposed to live in for 6 months, okay? The dinette turns into one kid's bed every night and turns back into a table every morning. We're like single file trying to get into the bathroom. One of the other kids is sleeping above the cab. Anyhow, it was an interesting adventure to say the least. But the long story short is we decided to drive east and it turned into a 6-month RV road trip where we went from Colorado to Maine all the way to Key West. And then we did 5 weeks in the Northwest. All this to say is that before we embarked on that journey, I had a feeling once again that this is going to hurt my business. I was certain of it. I prepared for the worst. Now, I know what you're thinking. 2020, it was raining business, so anybody could be successful in that time. But I had made a bold decision in my business at this point that I wasn't going to be doing anything client facing anymore. So that was a terrifying decision. I thought for sure if I don't handle all the new client inquiries, if I have someone else on my team do that, there's no way. Like, we're going to have a huge decline in business. And I prepared for the worst financially. I literally ran the numbers and thought, what's the least amount of money I can earn and still be able to pay our bills? And the same thing happened as I was going into this road trip. I was like, what's the worst case scenario? And I thought to myself, well, I've experienced massive declines before, and I have the tools to turn the faucet on again. So we're just going to do this because this is crazy and we're going to rewrite the crazy. So we're going to do this anyway. Well, as a result, surprisingly, we ended up having another 50% increase that year. So again, you could blame it on the market, but there were also big decisions that were made with fear along for the ride that allowed me to be present with homeschooling, to run a mortgage team, to run a podcast, and to run a coaching business at this point. So forward into 2021, and now I've invested in another mastermind community where I'm learning about investing in Airbnbs. We start buying out of state Airbnbs. We had never bought real estate outside of Colorado. So that was a big risk, and that led to some big decisions. And then we roll into 2022. We pull our kids out of school for 5 weeks. At this point, I'm thinking there's no rules really. And we take our kids down to the beach in South Padre Island, Texas, to set up an Airbnb, and we homeschool them again. And as we're coming into the end of 2022, I'm speaking at a real estate conference, and I'm doing the activity that I always share on this podcast and on the stages. And I just ask everybody in the audience to fill in the blanks. I wish I could fill in the blanks. And then what's the word that comes next is but. And I said, listen for the but. And whatever comes after but, write it out. And they did. And whatever comes after but is fear. And I left that conference and I came home and I said to my husband, I think the whisper just became a roar, because I heard myself teaching others to listen to the wish on your heart and then get intimate with the fear and evaluate it and take action anyway. And my wish was, I wish I could leave the mortgage business and have Pursuing Freedom be my full-time focus and my full-time career, my full-time vocation. This is my life's work, and I want to change lives. And it was terrifying. And I knew in my heart and soul that everyone that I was going to tell and everyone that I was going to abandon was going to disown me. That was fact, okay? My fear was fact. So if you have fears that feel like fact, I'm here to tell you it's never true. It's never a fact. I had those hard conversations, trembling with anxiety, tears streaming down my eyes, certain that everyone was going to hate me. And my biggest fear was that I was going to let people down. It wasn't whether I could survive. It was literally that I'm going to let people down, and what are people going to think of me? And I think a lot of us live our lives that way. We live our lives in fear of what others will think. I heard something recently that the prefrontal cortex of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain, is the number one motivator is belonging. And so the idea of the concept of hurting somebody, of letting someone down, of abandoning people was so powerful that I would be willing to postpone what felt like my life's dream, my life's work. Literally, I feel like I'm living inside a pipe dream of my younger self. Like, this is my divine assignment and I get to do this. And it's a blast now. As it turns out, once again, fear was a liar. So I come into 2023, I launched full time into speaking, coaching, continuing what I was doing, but now having this be my primary focus and all my attention. A series of tragedies ensued. Not worth getting into, but it was a really, really tough year for me in my personal life. And I struggled through a lot of grief, like one after another after another. And I had to really turn inward at that time. And in that surrender, I was guided, and I literally slowed down. I couldn't muster up the energy to power through grief. I couldn't hustle. I literally didn't have the energy. So here it was, like my second round of grief, but this time it was like 3 things in a row. So I just had to slow down. And this is why, if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you've heard my message move from goal achiever, right, to alignment, from chasing to allowing, from figuring it out to getting curious and listening for the intuition and the impulses. And in that year, we had extraordinary expansion and growth and impact. And I have been having a blast ever since. But if I'm honest, I started to get out of alignment coming into 2024. And I started comparing myself to what other people in my arena were doing. I started adopting strategies that were not in alignment with who I am. I started feeling frustrated, impatient. I started feeling like I was chasing, like I wasn't good enough, like I wasn't there yet. And so we have to be a witness to these seasons of our life. I share this long story, you guys, because there's a lot of lessons here that I personally have experienced and that I am certain you will find in your own recent 9-year cycle. I bet if you look back on the last 9 years, you'll see where you took risks. You'll remember when you were scared. You'll remember where there were pockets of joy. You'll remember when there were challenges that you've overcome. You'll remember times that you were resilient and you persevered. You remember those valleys of darkness where you felt stuck and you felt uncertain and it all turned out okay. So, right now, as we go into 2026, and I did this process for myself because in 2025, I became a witness to the fact that, you know what? I'm not like the others. I'm not here to fit the mold. And I started to reduce the consumption of the things I should be doing, the things I'm supposed to be doing, to go get, to do, to get so I can feel. And it brings me back to the early days of lead generation in the mortgage and the real estate business. It's like you need to do these things so you can get these leads, so you can get these deals, so you can get the money, so you can feel safe. And it all predicates from a place of I feel unsafe. Well, what I'm passionate about is helping you reverse engineer this. How do you access feelings of safety by just looking around at where you live and who you spend your time with? How do you find things to feel grateful for? How do you find things to feel joy about on a daily basis? And when you get there, you can find peace within you even before the circumstances have changed. And from that state of peace and love, you can start to receive impulses that feel more like inspired action. You feel unleashed. Like I feel compelled to share the message with you. I don't do it because I hope I can get something from this. So, what does it look like in your daily life, in your business? What has it looked like in the past? And what are you ready to release? Are you ready to stop chasing and start attracting? Are you ready to believe that's even a possibility? Are you ready to slow down? Are you ready to enjoy the days, the moments of the days today? So that you can start to feel aligned with what abundance feels like and start to call it in and be a match for it? Are you ready to stop tolerating? Are you ready to stop outsourcing your confidence to other people's opinions? You ready to stop needing approval or be validated? So here's the thing. I did an activity at my retreat recently that was shared by one of our guests, and it led me to 3 words. The words that I came up with were loving, peaceful, and vibrant. And I'm confident that if I let myself find access to feelings of loving, peaceful, and vibrant, then I will be able to be a match for others who radiate the same kind of energy and who are ready for the momentum, the power, and the possibility that 2026 holds. And so I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to shed a lot of things, a lot of lessons. Those lessons were learned. They were not failures and they do not define me. There is no regret and there is no shame and there's nothing that is negative that I'm going to carry with me into 2026. And when I feel those old fears, knocking at the door, I'm just going to recognize it and say, it's okay. It's part of being human. I don't need you to go away. But I'm ready. I'm ready for the year of the horse. I'm ready to jump on and experience the great adventure of the next 9-year cycle. So buckle up, giddy up. If you're following along the podcast, you're going to feel it in my energy because I am absolutely fired up. And so is everyone inside my community. And the miracles we've been experiencing are next level. So if you're ready to bet on you, if you know deep down inside you're meant for more, and you know that you've been showing up through the filter of performing, over functioning, people pleasing, not enoughness, comparisonitis, and you're ready to shed all that, you're ready to giddy up, to buckle up and experience the ride of your life, I would highly encourage you to contact me. There are so many different ways I can support you. We have the Academy. It's only $49 a month. You can access at pursuingfreedom.com/academy. It's tons of self-paced lessons and trainings from a community of coaches. It's not just me. It's not the Erin Bradley show. Don't worry. I bring in guest experts, trainers, service providers, all kinds of people that have different personalities, different modalities, different strategies, just so that I can meet you exactly where you are And if you find someone that's a friend of mine, that's another mentor, another coach that emits the signal that's the clearest frequency for you, that just hits, perfect. Then I've done my work, because my superpower is connecting you to the resources that are going to take you to the next level in your life and business, and not through sacrifice, through peace and through ease and through alignment. And we also have our community that meets twice a week, which is so much fun. It's called the Collective. It's pursuingfreedom.com/collective. I can also support you one-on-one in my VIP 90-day immersions. I coach teams. If you are wondering how to slow down to coach your team members, I can actually support coaching your team members up so that you can grow leaders inside of your team, and you can empower people to help you grow the business, that they can start to take over the responsibilities and free you up to get that ROI of energy, enthusiasm, love, impact, vibrance, and so that you can grow beyond that personal capacity. You do not have to settle for burnout as a badge of honor in this business. All right, here we go. It's about to get spicy. Thank you for being here for my 300th episode. If you've been following all along, I love you so, so much. I appreciate you guys. And please, if you are enjoying even this one episode, I would love if you would please leave a 5-star review wherever you can, because that is the thing that helps us continue to attract amazing guests and help this content get found. I love you so much. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.